I paid for this specific seat, and I am not moving unless I see the policy.
Ma'am, we are just trying to accommodate everyone on this oversold flight.
If you could just move to row 20.
I'm sorry, madam, but this seat is currently occupied. I need you to move back down the aisle.
There is no one here, and I have a boarding pass for this seat. I am staying right here.
The overhead lights buzzed, a dull white haze over gate 47. Maya Thompson clutched her toddler's hand, her boarding pass trembling in her palm. "Ma'am, I'm afraid you can't board this flight," the gate agent said, voice flat as concrete. Maya blinked. "Excuse me?" The man adjusted his headset, eyes darting around, avoiding hers. "Your seat is not available. The airline has assigned it elsewhere." She felt the heat crawl up her neck, a tight coil of disbelief and fear. Around her, passengers shuffled, murmuring in indifference. No one stepped forward. "Why?" "There's a reservation." "Right here," she said, waving her phone. The agent's smile was thin, practiced, polite only in the way a knife is polite before it cuts. "Policies are policies, ma'am. There's nothing I can do." Maya's chest tightened. Every rational thought screamed this was wrong. She could feel the weight of it, the invisible barrier of judgment she had seen too many times before. Behind the gate, a man in a crisp suit watched, arms crossed, lips curling into a smirk. The airline owner himself. He didn't need to say a word. Power radiated from him, sharp and casual. "Is this about me being black?" Maya whispered, almost to herself. The man's smirk widened. "Maybe it is," he said, and a chill crept down her spine. Maya tightened her grip on her son, heart hammering, and for the first time, she realized she was about to fight a giant who thought rules, money, and status made him untouchable, and losing was an option. The overhead lights flickered, buzzing like a swarm of invisible insects. Maya Thompson gripped her son's small hand, his restless energy tugging her attention as the line snaked through gate 47. Her boarding pass, clenched tightly in her other hand, was a promise, a guarantee that had suddenly vanished. "Ma'am, I'm afraid you can't board this flight," the gate agent said, his voice clipped, rehearsed. Maya blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" The man adjusted his headset, eyes skimming the crowd but never meeting hers. "Your seat is not available. The airline has assigned it elsewhere." Her heart hammered. "That's impossible. I reserved this 3 months ago. Look, right here." She waved her phone, screen glowing, a digital declaration of her rights. The agent's smile was polite, thin, a blade disguised as civility. "Policies are policies, ma'am. There's nothing I can do." Around them, the hum of passengers continued, indifferent. Some whispered, some stared, some glanced away, unwilling to intervene. Her son tugged at her sleeve, sensing tension but not fully understanding. "Is this about me being black?" she whispered, voice tight with disbelief. From behind the gate, a tall man in a crisp navy suit leaned against the railing, arms crossed. His gaze was calm, predatory, dismissive. The airline owner. He didn't have to speak. Power radiated from him in waves. "Maybe it is," he said finally, and Maya felt a chill spike down her spine. She tightened her grip on her son, teeth clenched. Her mind raced. Fear, anger, humiliation, disbelief, spinning together like a cyclone. She had faced prejudice before. She had fought battles that left scars, seen silent exclusions that carved holes in her confidence. But never in such a public arena, never with a toddler in her arms. The agent gestured vaguely to the line behind her. "There are other flights, ma'am. You'll have to wait for the next one." "Wait!" Maya's voice rose, low but fierce. "I have a connecting flight. I have a schedule. You can't just—" "Ma'am," the agent interrupted, voice sharper now. "You need to step aside." A mother nearby offered a sympathetic look, but no one moved to help. Maya's chest tightened as she realized how alone she was, how casually injustice seemed to everyone else. The absurdity of the situation was suffocating. Rules twisted like knives, wielded to humiliate rather than protect. Maya swallowed. She refused to cry, not here, not now, not in front of him. Her son clutched her hand, trusting her to navigate the storm. And she would. She leveled her gaze at the owner, who finally met her eyes. The faint smirk had hardened. Confidence radiated from him, unearned and infuriating. "You think rules make you untouchable," she said, voice barely above a whisper, but every word sharp. "You have no idea who you're messing with." He leaned back, indifferent, a shadow of amusement flickering across his face. Maya felt the weight of the moment, how a single person's arrogance could ripple, affecting lives with ease. She inhaled sharply, letting anger settle into resolve. The crowd moved around her like a river she could not yet swim in. She imagined herself submerged in that current, tossed by institutional power and social silence. But she wouldn't drown. She couldn't, not with her son. Her phone buzzed. A reminder of the next flight, a tiny digital beacon of time pressing against her predicament. The agent gestured again. Maya clenched her jaw, breath catching as realization struck. She would have to fight here now, against a man whose wealth and status insulated him from consequence. And he thought he had already won. A trembling hand gripped her son's shoulder. Maya steadied herself, meeting the owner's gaze one last time before stepping aside. But the fire had ignited, and she knew there was no turning back. Somewhere in the building, the PA system announced another delayed flight. The words blurred in her mind, replaced by the sharp, clear understanding that her life and her dignity were now the battlefield. The owner's smirk lingered. The agent turned away, and Maya whispered to herself a promise to the universe. "You don't know me. You will regret this." The terminal hummed with the indifferent drone of travel, wheels rolling, announcements crackling, voices blending into an anonymous murmur. Maya Thompson sat on a cold metal bench, her toddler curled against her side, eyes wide but trusting. She watched the boarding gate from across the terminal, where the man in the Navy suit, the airline owner, continued to move through the crowd as if untouched, untouchable. Her phone rested on her lap, still glowing from the screen she had waved at the gate agent moments ago. Confirmation, reservation, ticket, everything she fought to secure, rendered meaningless by a shrug and a polite smile. "Mommy, why won't they let us on the plane?" her son asked, voice small and confused. Maya stroked his hair, forcing calm into her voice. "Some people make rules that aren't fair, baby, but we'll figure it out." Her words felt fragile, brittle against the weight pressing down from every side. Around her, the crowd moved in patterns that ignored her. A couple whispered to each other, glancing at her with mild curiosity, and then looked away. A businessman muttered something under his breath, shaking his head as if she had caused a disruption. No one stepped in. The silence was deafening. Witnesses everywhere, but protection nowhere. A flight attendant passed, clipboard in hand, and gave Maya a polite, rehearsed smile. She didn't stop. She didn't offer help. It was the same pattern she had seen before. Small gestures that carried no risk, small acknowledgments that changed nothing. Maya's chest tightened as anger built, coiling inside her like a spring. Every part of her recognized the pattern. She had been here before, not in airports, but in offices, restaurants, classrooms. Each time, someone in authority had smiled, deferred, or whispered excuses while the injustice stood. And now, it had a name, a face, and a suit tailored for power. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her lawyer friend, Tanya. "Maya, what happened? Are you okay? Tell me everything." Maya took a deep breath, fingers trembling slightly as she typed back a short, controlled message. "Denied at gate. Owner present. Policy excuse. Need advice. Call you in 5. The reply came almost instantly. "Stay calm. Document everything. Don't engage rashly. This is bigger than them. You have leverage." She put the phone down and looked around again. There was leverage. There had to be. But leverage didn't stop the stares, the whispers, or the suffocating weight of public scrutiny. Every glance felt like judgment. Every silence felt like complicity. "Mommy?" Her son's voice pulled her out of the spiraling thoughts. He was tugging gently at her sleeve. "Are we going to fly?" Maya smiled, though it felt forced, a thin mask over the fury simmering inside. "Yes, baby, we're going to fly. We just have to wait a little." But even as she said it, she knew waiting was no longer an option. The agent at the gate glanced over, noticing her presence now, and raised an eyebrow. There was an unspoken message in the gesture. Don't make this worse. But Maya didn't feel fear anymore, only resolve. The humiliation had sparked something she couldn't ignore. She watched the airline owner again, standing near the back of the crowd, phone in hand, speaking quietly to someone in a sharp suit. He didn't need to see her to know she was watching. Power, he believed, was silent and absolute, but Maya understood power differently. It could be challenged. It could be exposed. It could be held accountable. A young woman passing by gave Maya a brief nod. Nothing more, but it was enough, a tiny acknowledgement that someone had noticed. Maya clutched her son closer, drawing strength from the small gestures that mattered, no matter how fleeting. She remembered all the times she had swallowed injustice, tried to blend, tried to appease, and she remembered the cost. Frustration, self-doubt, anger tucked away so others wouldn't see it. Not this time. This time, she wouldn't blend. She wouldn't bow. She wouldn't disappear into polite silence. Her phone buzzed again, this time an incoming call from Tanya. Maya answered, her voice steady but urgent. "Maya, talk to me. What's happening?" Tanya asked. I've been denied at the gate," Maya said. She could hear the disbelief in her own voice, the tightness of it. "They're saying policies. The owner's here. He doesn't even care." "Good. That's exactly why we document everything. Every word, every look, every delay. This is systemic, not personal, but it can be challenged," Tanya said. "You're going to fight this. Don't let them intimidate you." Maya felt a surge of determination. "I will. I don't know how yet, but I will. And I won't let it end here. Not for me, not for my son." She hung up and looked around the terminal once more. Faces blurred, indifferent. But somewhere in the crowd, a story was forming. Hers. And soon, others would see it too. She adjusted her son on her lap, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. The hum of the airport had shifted subtly, like a current waiting to surge. Maya's mind raced, cataloging every injustice, every slight, every silent witness who had done nothing. And she promised herself, quietly, fiercely, that she would turn every silent witness into a witness for justice. Her resolve hardened. She would fight, and this time the silence would not be the enemy. It would be her proof. The airline owner's smirk lingered in her memory. But Maya knew one thing. Smirks could crack. Rules could bend. And even the tallest towers of arrogance had foundations weak enough to crumble under the weight of truth. She exhaled slowly, feeling the fire in her chest settle into focus. The first battle had been lost. The war was just beginning. Maya sat on her couch, the low hum of the air conditioner filling the apartment like a dull heartbeat. Her son, exhausted from the airport ordeal, slept curled up beside her on the worn sofa. His soft breathing was the only sound that grounded her, a tether to reality amid the storm of rage and disbelief that churned in her chest. She stared at her phone, fingers hovering over the screen. Tanya's name flashed insistently. Taking a deep breath, she pressed call. "Tanya," Maya said as soon as the line connected, trying to keep her voice calm. But the tightness in her throat betrayed her. "Maya, oh my God, are you okay? What happened? I saw your text. Tell me everything." Tanya's voice was a mix of urgency and disbelief. Maya exhaled slowly, her hands gripping the edge of the sofa. "They denied me at the gate. My seat, for no reason. And the owner was there, watching, smirking. It was humiliating. Public. My son was there." Her voice cracked, but she swallowed the rest. Tanya's intake of breath was audible. "They what? Maya, that's outrageous. That's illegal. That's discrimination. You need to document everything. Every word, every gesture, every action. Did anyone see it? Any witnesses?" Maya ran to the scene in her mind, the agent polite but cold, the passengers staring and turning away. The airline owner, arms crossed, radiating that infuriating sense of untouchable power. Some passengers noticed, maybe, she admitted, but no one stepped forward. Everyone stayed silent. "Perfect," Tanya said sharply, "because silence doesn't protect them. It protects the system that allows them to act this way. We can use it. Social media, complaints, press, And legally, we can build a case. You need to write everything down. Names, times, conversations. Even the way they looked at you counts. Don't leave anything out. Maya's jaw tightened. She had been exhausted before mentally, emotionally, but Tanya's words lit a fire in her. You really think it matters? That I can do something. It matters because someone has to. Tanya said firmly. And yes, you can. You have the right to stand up, to expose this. And you're not alone. I'll help you every step of the way. But you have to act fast before they cover their tracks. Maya leaned back, exhaling slowly. Her apartment felt suddenly smaller, the walls closing in with urgency. She pictured the gate again. The agent smiled, the crowd, the smirk of the man who thought he was untouchable. And for the first time, she felt less fear than determination. Okay, she said, voice firmer now. I'll do it. I'll gather everything. Text, photos, videos. I'll write down exactly what happened, every word, every gesture, every lie they told. And I'll get witnesses if I can. Tanya's voice softened. Good. You're not just protecting yourself. You're protecting every black mother, every person who has been silenced, humiliated, dismissed. You're turning this into something bigger. And Maya, I know it's exhausting, but you can't let their arrogance win. Not now, not ever. Maya's thoughts drifted to her son, sleeping quietly beside her. She imagined a world where he would grow up without seeing his mother bowed by injustice, without learning that power could always crush the powerless. No, she thought, that world would not be his reality if she had any say in it. She opened a new note on her phone and began typing. Every detail poured out. The boarding pass, the agent's words, the way he avoided her gaze, the owner leaning against the railing, smirk sharp as a blade. She described the subtle cruelty of silent passengers, the way the public's indifference made the humiliation sting deeper. Every moment, she wrote, every emotion, every injustice was carefully cataloged. 2 hours later, the first draft was done. Her fingers were stiff, her eyes tired, but her resolve had never been sharper. She had a plan now, a path through the chaos, a strategy against the arrogance that had tried to crush her. Tanya called again. Have you started collecting evidence? Yes, Maya said, swallowing fatigue. I've got everything I can. I'll reach out to witnesses tomorrow. And I want to go public. Not to attack, but to expose truth. To show what happens when people abuse their power. Tanya's approval came in a quiet, firm tone. That's exactly right. Controlled, factual, truthful. Emotionally charged, yes, but grounded. You'll be unstoppable if you do this correctly. Maya set the phone down and looked at her son, sleeping softly. Her resolve hardened. This wasn't just about a flight. It was about justice, accountability, dignity. She had been silenced before, had been forced to bend, to smile, to swallow indignities, but never again. She imagined the airline owner reading the headlines, hearing the stories, realizing that his smirk, his casual arrogance, could no longer shield him. And for the first time since that moment at the gate, she smiled, not a smile of relief, but one of quiet, burning determination. Somewhere in the city, she thought, power would meet resistance, and this time would not bow. Her phone buzzed again, a reminder of the next flight, the next step, the ticking clock of consequence. Maya took a deep breath, her chest tight, but steady. The battle was only beginning. She pressed record on her voice memos. Every word counted. Every action mattered. The first strike had been denied at the gate. Now, she would write the story of her own resistance. And she would not stop until justice, in whatever form it took, had been delivered. The next morning, Maya scrolled through her phone while her son played quietly on the living room rug. News alerts flashed across the screen. Flight delays, travel tips, a story buried deep about a minor boarding issue at gate 47. Her stomach tightened. Minor? She read the article again, the words mocking and sanitized. Passenger denied boarding due to airline policy. Staff resolved situation promptly. Company regrets inconvenience. Maya's fingers hovered over the screen, then slammed down on her phone. Her teeth clenched. This was not just misinformation. It was erasure. The article painted her as a nuisance, a mere inconvenience to the airline's smooth operation. Her reality, humiliation, fear, the sneer of the owner, was nowhere to be found. She called Tanya immediately. "Tanya, they're spinning it," she said, voice tight. "I'm invisible. My experience, our experience, is being erased." "That's expected," Tanya replied, calm but firm. "Corporations do this. They minimize, sanitize, rewrite the story so no one questions their authority. But it's not too late. You've got leverage, documentation, witnesses, a story they can't just delete. We turn the narrative around, control it before they bury it." Maya paced a small apartment, each step a mix of frustration and determination. I don't want to be the angry black mom. I don't want to be painted that way. But I can't let them get away with this. "You won't," Tanya said. "You'll tell the truth. Facts first. Emotions, yes, but carefully. People respond to both outrage and clarity. We'll make them accountable. And the PR narrative? We'll dismantle it." Maya exhaled. She thought about the owner, the man in the navy suit, probably sitting in some glass-walled office, sipping coffee, convinced his image untarnished. How many times had he believed power was bulletproof? Too many to count. But he hadn't counted her. She began reaching out to other passengers who had witnessed the scene. Emails, texts, social media messages. Each response chipped away at the sanitized story the airline wanted to tell. Some hesitated. Some apologized for staying silent. And a few promised to speak if asked formally. Small victories, but each one mattered. Then came the calls from journalists. Curious, cautious, hungry for the human story behind the corporate press release. One reporter, a sharp-voiced woman named Carla, asked pointed questions. "Were you denied because of your race?" Carla's tone was careful, measured. "Yes," Maya said. She didn't hesitate. The agent cited policies, but the owner's presence, the way he looked at me, everything in that moment said the truth. I was being denied because I am black. This is not an isolated incident. It's systemic. Carla scribbled notes. "We'll need proof. Boarding passes, communication, anything you recorded." Maya held her phone tightly. She had proof. She had witnesses. She had the memory of every nuance, every microaggression, every silent passenger complicit in the humiliation. By evening, Maya saw the first signs of pushback from the airline. Emails from PR representatives, carefully crafted, polite, and dismissive. "We regret any inconvenience," they wrote, "and are reviewing the matter internally. Our commitment to diversity and inclusion is unwavering." Maya laughed softly, a short bark of disbelief. Commitment to diversity and inclusion. The words mocked the humiliation she had endured. She reread the note, polished, sterile, empty. Their words carried no weight against the truth of her lived experience. She called Tanya again. "They sent me their statement, full of corporate buzzwords, but it's meaningless. They think a press release erases reality." "That's why we escalate," Tanya said. "PR is a shield. But shields break under pressure. Evidence, exposure, public accountability. You have all three." Maya felt her anger crystallize into purpose. The ordeal had begun at a gate, with a smirk and a thin smile. Now it had expanded into something bigger. The fight against institutional denial, against sanitized narratives that erase black voices. That night, she wrote a long post for social media, measured but pointed. She described the events in detail, naming neither the agent nor the owner directly, but painting the picture clearly enough that readers would understand the injustice. She tagged journalists, organizations advocating for travelers' rights, and shared her call to action. Truth over silence, accountability over convenience. By morning, the post had gained traction. Comments poured in: support, outrage, solidarity. People shared their own stories of discrimination. Maya scrolled through, seeing faces, words, moments that mirrored her own. She realized the problem wasn't just one airline, one gate, or one man. It was a system. And yet, with every voice raised, with every witness stepping forward, the system's armor cracked. Her son sat beside her, tugging at her sleeve. "Mommy, will they let us fly now?" Maya smiled, warmth threading through her exhaustion. Soon, baby. Soon. But we're going to make sure everyone knows the truth first. She looked out the window at the city skyline, lights blurred by the evening drizzle. Somewhere in a tower downtown, the airline owner likely lounged in his office, sipping coffee, unaware that his carefully constructed empire of influence was about to be challenged. Maya's chest tightened, not with fear, but with focus. The story was bigger than a single flight, bigger than her alone. And now, with evidence, witnesses, and public attention, she was ready to confront it. The first cracks were forming in the polished, sterile walls of the airline's narrative. And Maya Thompson? She would be the force widening them. The next week felt like moving through quicksand. Every step Maya took, every interaction with travel or public spaces reminded her of the invisible line she couldn't cross without scrutiny. She had thought the airport incident was an isolated battle, but it was only the beginning. She entered the lobby of a nearby hotel for a meeting with a journalist covering her story. The clerk's eyes lingered on her son, then darted to her, calculating something in a silent judgment. "Do you have a reservation?" he asked, voice neutral but laced with suspicion. "Yes," Maya replied calmly, showing confirmation. The clerk scanned the system, brows furrowed as if she were an anomaly in his records. "Room 312. Here's your key." She took it without comment, but the subtle weight of his mistrust prickled at her skin. It was familiar. The polite suspicion, the microaggressions she had trained herself to ignore for decades. They weren't overt, weren't loud enough for anyone else to notice, but they added up, small cuts against her dignity. Later, at the airport for a connecting flight, the pattern repeated. A gate agent questioned her passport, and boarding passed more than any other passenger. "Ma'am, are you traveling alone?" he asked, not out of curiosity but doubt. "I'm traveling with my son," Maya said, steady. She had memorized a polite but firm tone that disarmed the casual prejudice embedded in these encounters. "Right," he muttered, scanning her documents again. She could feel the stares of other travelers, some sympathetic, most indifferent. The dissonance was exhausting, always on guard, always explaining, always proving herself. On the plane, a flight attendant hesitated a row, eyes flicking to her toddler and back. "Do you need help with your bag?" she asked, voice rehearsed, as if offering kindness only to justify an unspoken doubt. Maya thanked her, smiling, but inside she was acutely aware of how she was constantly being evaluated. Even online, she wasn't safe. Social media notifications brought messages she could feel in her chest. Comments ranged from support to coded attacks. Maybe she just didn't follow policy, or not every rule violation is racism. The casual dismissal stung more than outright hate. It was systemic. People enforcing power through words, gestures, silences. That evening, Maya met Tanya at a coffee shop. The warm light and the smell of roasted beans could not mask the weight pressing on her shoulders. She spoke in low tones, recounting the day's encounters. "They're trying to wear you down," Tanya said, stirring her coffee slowly. "Microaggressions, small humiliations, they accumulate until you doubt yourself. But you didn't. You documented. You stayed composed. You held your ground. That's resistance." Maya nodded, but exhaustion pulled at her. "It's just relentless. Everywhere I go, I feel watched, judged. It's like a constant reminder that I'm different, that I have to prove myself over and over. And you are proving something," Tanya said firmly. "You're proving that you won't be silenced, that you won't be erased, that you can navigate this world as a black mother and still fight for your dignity. That's powerful. But we have to keep pushing strategically. Social media, journalists, legal action. Every microaggression, every silent bystander, every dismissive agent is part of the evidence." Maya's hands clench around her coffee cup, knuckles white. "They think I'll get tired, give up, but I'm not going to. I won't disappear just because they want me to." The next day, she returned to the airline's customer service desk to clarify her rebook flights. The agent greeted her with forced politeness. "Ma'am, everything is ready for your next flight." "Thank you," Maya said, keeping her voice calm. Inside, she cataloged every word, every hesitation, every glance. Each subtle behavior was proof of the systemic pattern she was exposing. Her phone buzzed. Another reporter requesting an interview. She smiled, small but determined. Every story she told, every witness she gathered, amplified her voice against the quiet, pervasive bias she faced. Even in casual spaces, microaggressions followed her. A security guard lingered too long at the scanning area. A cab driver avoided eye contact, muttering polite excuses. Friends reached out, worried, and Maya realized how the ripple effect of her story was reaching far beyond her own experience. It wasn't just about her flight anymore. It was about every moment of quiet dismissal, every brush with systemic bias. Back in her apartment, Maya documented everything. Every interaction, every subtle humiliation, every act that confirmed the pattern. She typed slowly, deliberately, each word a small defiance. Evidence was no longer just facts. It was a story of lived experience, of persistence in the face of everyday injustice. She glanced at her son sleeping on the couch, the quiet innocence of his trust in her strength, a constant reminder of why she couldn't relent. Her fight was not just for herself. It was for him, for the future, for every child who might someday face the same subtle, suffocating walls of systemic discrimination. That night, she drafted another message to Tanya. Microaggressions everywhere. Exhausting but documented. They think I'm fragile. They're wrong. The reply came immediately. Good. Keep documenting. They are building a case against themselves. Every slight, every silent bystander, every excuse, they're writing your story for you. Stay focused. Maya closed her laptop and exhaled. Exhaustion weighed on her body, but her mind was sharp, alert. She had turned every small indignity into evidence, every microaggression into a piece of the puzzle exposing systemic injustice. And somewhere in the company's headquarters, she imagined the airline owner, confident in his power, unaware that his smirk would not survive scrutiny. Maya smiled faintly. The tide was turning, and this time, the currents were hers to command. Maya sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, sticky notes scattered like battle plans. Each note was a thread of strategy, evidence collection, witness statements, social media narrative, legal consultation. Every microaggression, every encounter at the airport, every dismissive comment from the airline staff now had a purpose, an arrow aimed at accountability. Her son colored quietly beside her, unaware of the storm swirling around their lives. Maya's gaze softened for a moment. Protecting him and teaching him resilience had become part of the fight itself. Her phone buzzed Tanya. Status? Tanya asked immediately when Maya answered. I compiled everything from the gate, the connecting flight, and the microaggressions. Witnesses have started confirming details. I'm organizing it all into a timeline. Maya's voice was calm, but underneath, determination thrummed like a drumbeat. Good, Tanya said. Now we strategize. You need to control the story before they spin it. Social media posts, press releases, interviews. Keep it factual, emotional, and undeniable. Every witness, every document strengthens your case. And legally, we're ready to escalate if necessary. Maya nodded. I know, but how do I make sure it's more than just noise? That people actually pay attention. You highlight the system, not just the incident, Tanya replied. Show the pattern. Show that this isn't isolated. Then, the story isn't about you as a victim. It's about them as a corporation failing their own people. That's where leverage lives. Maya exhaled a slow, controlled release. She opened a new document. Strategic Exposure Plan. Every section carefully detailed. Timelines, media contacts, evidence logs, social media angles. She highlighted the moments that showcase bias, the moments that expose the owner's arrogance, and the small victories. The witnesses who stepped forward, the journalist contacts ready to report. She paused to consider the emotional stakes. The airline's PR machine had already begun spinning the story. Minor inconvenience. Policies enforced. Passenger cooperation appreciated. Their narrative was sterile, polished, protective of a man who thought himself untouchable. But Maya had something stronger. Truth and lived experience. Later, at a coffee shop, Tanya joined her. The scent of espresso and pastry filled the air, a temporary distraction from the storm of strategy on the table. "You're ready," Tanya said, sliding a notebook toward her. Every note, every detail, every recorded interaction, it's all here. You have the narrative, and now we have the witnesses. You're prepared to go public in a way they can't ignore. Maya picked up the notebook, flipping through pages densely packed with observations. Each witness statement, each text, each email from airline staff reinforced the pattern she was exposing. And the owner? Maya asked, her tone sharp. "He knows this is coming. He'll try to discredit me, spin it further." "Let them try," Tanya replied. "The more they resist, the more attention you gain. Every lie they tell will only be evidence of their arrogance. People will see through the facade." Maya leaned back, thoughts turning inward. She remembered the smirk at gate 47, the polite dismissal of the agent, the silent passengers, the ecosystem of complicity that allowed such humiliation to thrive. But now, every injustice had a counterweight. Documentation, witnesses, strategy. She was no longer reacting. She was orchestrating. She drafted posts for social media, carefully balancing emotion and facts. Short, powerful captions paired with screenshots of boarding passes, witness messages, and recordings of conversations. Each post tagged journalists, advocacy organizations, and travel watchdogs. Every word carried weight, enough to pierce the corporate shield. Her phone buzzed. Another reporter, another interview request. Maya smiled faintly. Each call was validation, a reminder that the story was growing beyond her. The narrative she controlled now had momentum. That night, Maya reviewed the timeline again. Every action, every step was methodical. Document all interactions. Collect witness statements. Share verified information with media. Monitor PR responses and adjust narrative. The storm outside mirrored her own energy. Wind rattling the windows, rain tapping in sharp, erratic bursts. It was as if the city itself recognized the tension, the urgency, the fight against quiet injustice. Her son yawned and curled against her side. Maya brushed his hair from his forehead. The weight of responsibility pressed down, but it was tempered by clarity. This was not just about a flight. It was about systemic accountability, exposing a pattern that many wanted ignored, denied, and erased. The next morning, she contacted the witnesses who had agreed to speak. Phone calls, emails, text messages. Each interaction reinforced her confidence. People had seen, and they were ready to testify. The system could not contain the narrative forever. By afternoon, Tanya joined her again, this time in the office of a small legal firm. Maps, timelines, and documents covered every surface. The owner's arrogance had underestimated one thing: her preparation. Each action was calculated, each moment leveraged. "You're building more than a case," Tanya said. "You're building accountability. And once you release this, there's no turning back. But that's okay. You're ready." Maya's chest tightened, a mix of fear and determination. "I know. This is bigger than me now. Bigger than the humiliation. I'm not just reclaiming my dignity. I'm making sure others don't suffer the same silence, the same erasure." Tanya smiled. "Exactly. Strategic resistance. Document, expose, leverage. Every move matters." Maya looked out the window, imagining the owner in his tower, confident, smug, and unaware that the tide was turning. Every microaggression, every dismissive glance, every silent witness had been transformed into fuel for her resistance. And this time, she was not just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the truth. Maya walked into glass-walled conference room, the scent of polished wood and leather wrapping around her like an armor she didn't need. Her son was with a trusted family friend for the day. She needed space for this fight, space for confrontation. The room was stark, corporate, and cold. Sunlight glinted off the long table, bouncing off the eyes of executives lined on either side. And at the head, the man she had faced once before, the airline owner, sat with arms folded, a smirk that still made her blood boil. "Ms. Thompson," he said smoothly, voice coated in practiced charm, "I hope your travel inconveniences haven't been too disruptive." Maya held his gaze evenly, feeling the fire in her chest settle into resolve. Disruptive? Let me be clear. My experience wasn't a minor inconvenience. It was humiliation, public, unnecessary, and based entirely on bias. And I'm here to make sure you understand the consequences of that. The room shifted subtly. Whispers, a cough, the scrape of a chair. Executives who had assumed the narrative would stay quiet. They hadn't counted on her preparation. The owner leaned back, smirk unwavering. Policies exist for a reason, Ms. Thompson. Our staff followed them. I fail to see how this constitutes anything more than a routine operational matter. Maya's fingers clenched on the edge of her folder. Policies are only fair if they're applied equally. If you think denying a confirmed reservation, because I am black is routine, then your definition of fairness is broken, and the public, regulators, and journalists are already seeing the truth. The executive beside him shifted in discomfort. One of the managers, younger, glanced at a tablet nervously. Maya caught the flicker of doubt, the first crack in a wall of corporate certainty. You have documentation? The owner asked, voice tight now. Yes, Maya said, sliding a stack of neatly organized papers across the table. Witness statements, emails, boarding passes, text records, and videos of staff interactions. Every moment of your so-called policy enforcement has been recorded and corroborated. He looked down at the stack, the smirk fading slightly. You can't prove intent, he said, voice low, controlled. Policies were followed. No one acted with malice. Maya leaned forward, eyes unwavering. Intent doesn't matter when the effect is the same. Systemic bias isn't always loud. It's subtle, insidious. And your silence, your indifference, your presence during the incident, those speak volumes. Every witness confirms what happened. You create a pattern and now it's exposed. The room was silent. Tension coiled like a snake ready to strike. The owner's assistant whispered something in his ear, but he ignored it, his confidence waning in the presence of evidence, truth, and a woman who refused to bend. You've gone public? He asked, voice clipped, almost incredulous. Yes, Maya said firmly. Social media, press, journalists. People are seeing the truth, and it's not going to stop until accountability is enforced. You underestimated me, and that's your mistake. The owner's jaw tightened. He looked around the room, searching for support, but he found only silence and shifting eyes. His empire of untouchable power, built on money, status, and carefully cultivated charm, was not immune to truth. You're attacking the company's reputation, he said finally, voice low. I'm holding it accountable, Maya corrected. There's a difference. You cannot build a system on bias and dismiss the consequences when it's exposed. And make no mistake, the people seeing the story now are not just witnesses. They are participants in a cultural reckoning. Silence no longer protects you. A journalist's email dinged on a laptop across the table. Maya glanced at it briefly. The story was growing, circulating beyond their walls, outside the sterile environment of corporate PR. Each read, each share, was a nail in the facade of immunity. The owner's assistant muttered something else, an attempt to calm the room. But the narrative had shifted. The room had seen the power of preparation, evidence, and courage. You're bold, the owner finally said, almost as if the word were a warning rather than praise. Maya straightened. I'm not bold. I'm prepared. You thought power alone could intimidate me. You were wrong. Policies could be rewritten. Biases could be challenged. Systems can be exposed. And today, you're learning that the people you dismiss are not powerless. The executives around the table avoided his gaze, shuffling papers nervously. The owner's presence, once commanding, now felt fragile against the weight of facts, witnesses, and truth. Maya closed her folder, standing tall. I want this resolved. I want accountability. I want changes implemented so no one else experiences what I did. And I want your assurance, both public and internal, that discrimination of any form will be addressed. The owner's hands clenched, then relaxed, a subtle shift betraying internal calculation. We'll review this internally, he said, voice tight, avoiding eye contact. Maya nodded. Good. That's a start. But understand this. The world is watching. And when institutions fail to act, people act. I've already mobilized witnesses, journalists, and public attention. Ignoring this will only escalate the consequences for you and your company. Silence filled the room again. The only sound was a low hum of air conditioning, sharp against the tension vibrating in the space. Maya could feel the shift, the first acknowledgement that power, when misused, was vulnerable. As she turned to leave, she met the owner's gaze one last time. The smirk was gone, replaced by a calculated mask. But she saw the crack, the first glimpse of understanding that arrogance and authority did not make him untouchable. Outside, the city skyline gleamed under the afternoon sun. Maya walked to the elevator with calm determination. The confrontation was not the end, but a pivotal moment. Power challenged, truth spoken, the first real cracks appearing in a carefully constructed facade. She felt the weight of victory in her chest. Not complete, not final, but undeniable. The fight had shifted from humiliation to accountability. And this time, she was leading it. Maya sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, coffee cooling beside her. She refreshed her social media feed, feeling the tension coiled in her chest tighten with anticipation. Her story had been shared earlier that morning, carefully composed, factual, emotional, and now it was beginning to ripple. Notifications poured in, likes, shares, comments. This is exactly what I've experienced. Finally, someone speaks the truth. Accountability matters. Some were supportive, others skeptical, but all contributed to the rising tide. She could feel swelling. Her phone buzzed. Tanya. They're trending, Tanya said, her voice urgent, thrilled. Maya, you're being picked up by multiple news outlets. Corporate PR is scrambling. They can't spin this. Your narrative is controlling the conversation. Maya leaned back, eyes scanning the rising numbers on her post. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments already. People were telling their stories alongside hers, validating her experience. The microaggressions, the silences, the gate-side humiliation, all now part of a public reckoning. They're watching, Tanya continued. The airline knows their image is crumbling. They're internally panicking. But you, this is your moment. The system is exposed. Maya's mind flashed back to gate 47, to her son curled against her, to the polite smiles and silent judgments of the crowd. It felt isolating then, unbearable. Now, the isolation had vanished. Witnesses, journalists, everyday people, all were bearing witness to her truth. She responded to a journalist's request for an interview. Yes, I'll speak, she typed, fingers trembling slightly. But I wanted focus on systemic accountability, not just my experience. Minutes later, she was live on a small news segment. Cameras, lights, microphones, everything familiar yet alien. The reporter, Carla, began, Ms. Thompson, thank you for joining us. Can you summarize what happened and why you decided to go public? Maya inhaled deeply, steadying herself. I was denied boarding for no legitimate reason. The owner of the airline was present. My son and I were publicly humiliated. And while policies were cited, the truth is that my race influenced every decision in that moment. Going public wasn't easy. But silence protects no one, and I refuse to allow this pattern of bias to continue unchecked. Carla nodded. And the response from the airline? Maya's eyes narrowed slightly, voice calm but firm. Their PR statements deny reality. They sanitize the truth. But the evidence, witnesses, documentation, and lived experience tells a different story. This isn't about me alone. It's about systemic failures that allow such treatment to continue. The segment ended, but the ripples only grew. By afternoon, clips of her interview circulated across platforms. Support poured in from advocacy groups, travelers, and ordinary citizens. Hashtags demanding accountability trended. Each share, each comment, amplified her voice, turning her personal struggle into a public reckoning. Her phone rang, a lawyer from a civil rights organization. We've been following your case, the man said. The documentation you collected is exceptional. We want to help you take legal action if the airline continues to deny responsibility. Maya's chest tightened, not with fear, but determination. Thank you, she said. That's exactly what I need. I want accountability, not revenge. Hours later, a text from one of the witnesses she had contacted earlier. I share my statement. People are responding. They see the pattern now. Thank you for giving me the courage to speak. Maya smiled faintly. Courage. That's what it had taken. And that's what she had inspired. Her fight had begun as a personal battle, but now it had become collective. People were not only seeing her truth, they were validating it, amplifying it, and standing beside her. Even the airline couldn't ignore it. Internal emails leaked to journalists hinted at chaos. Frantic meetings, PR teams revising statements, damage control attempts. The veneer of control the owner had relied upon was cracking. Her phone buzzed again. Tanya, the owner is calling, wants to negotiate before it gets worse. He knows the narrative is no longer his to control. Maya set her jaw. She had imagined this moment, power finally confronting accountability. But she was cautious. Good. But no concessions without real change. Policies, training, and public acknowledgement. That's non-negotiable. The afternoon faded into evening. Maya's son returned from his day with his family friend, wide-eyed and energetic, oblivious to the storm of public discourse swirling around him. Maya hugged him tight, letting the small warmth anchor her. This isn't just for me, baby, she whispered. It's for all the people who've been silenced, dismissed, erased. And we're making sure it stops. She glanced at the laptop, where comments, shares, and messages continued to pour in. The momentum was undeniable. The viral moment was more than just attention. It was accountability in motion. Later, she sat back and exhaled slowly. The fear, the humiliation, the countless small indignities, they hadn't disappeared, but they had been transformed into evidence, into power, into a story that demanded acknowledgement. Somewhere in a high-rise downtown, the airline owner likely sat in his office, staring at a dashboard of social media reactions, news clips, and emails, realizing too late that control had slipped through his fingers. His carefully curated image was unraveling, and the force behind it was not money, not PR, not authority. It was truth amplified, undeniable, and unyielding. Maya Thompson smiled faintly, tired but victorious. The first strike at the gate had become a movement, and the world was watching. Maya stood outside the corporate headquarters, the glass tower reflecting the morning sun like a spotlight on everything she had endured. Security buzzed past her, cameras capturing employees arriving for their day, unaware that the tide of accountability was about to reach them. Inside, the airline owner paced his corner office. Phone pressed his ear. Yes, I understand, but the public backlash is... He cut himself off, jaw tightening. We need to issue a proper statement. Training programs, diversity initiatives, everything. But Maya had anticipated this. That statement, that scramble, that feigned urgency, it was all part of the reckoning. She had prepared for it, documented it, and ensured that journalists, witnesses, and advocacy groups were ready to hold the company accountable. Tanya's voice came through her earpiece, calm and steady. Remember, this is not just about him. It's about systemic patterns. Keep your focus. Facts, evidence, truth. Maya nodded, though he couldn't see her. She adjusted her blazer, straightened her posture, and entered the lobby. Every footstep echoed with purpose. This wasn't fear anymore. This was control. The boardroom doors opened. Executives waited, papers and tablets in hand. Faces taut with the realization that the narrative was no longer theirs to spin. The airline owner stood, attempting a composed smile. Ms. Thompson, he said, voice carefully measured, thank you for coming. We want to address your concerns. Policies will be reviewed, training will be implemented, and... Don't offer words that mean nothing, Maya interrupted, voice clear and strong. This isn't a PR exercise. It's accountability. My son and I were denied what every other passenger received. Public humiliation and systemic bias cannot be erased with a statement. Actions are required. The room was silent. Whispers were caught in the walls. One executive swallowed audibly. Another tapped nervously at a tablet. The owner's confident veneer was cracking. You have documentation, he said finally, tone sharper now. I do, Maya said, sliding the thick folder across the table. Witness statements, video clips, boarding passes, emails. Every interaction cataloged and annotated. Each page was proof. Each word evidence of systemic failure. The owner picked up a document, scanning the pages. His hand shook slightly, a subtle betrayal of his composure. "You can, this won't. You underestimated me," Maya said calmly. "You underestimated how far I go to expose injustice. The public, journalists, witnesses, they're already engaged. Every microaggression, every dismissive glance, every silent bystander is now documented, and the world is watching." A junior executive, previously silent, cleared her throat. "Sir, the media coverage is escalating. The story is trending globally. Stakeholders are asking questions. The PR team can't contain it." The owner's smirk had disappeared completely. He rubbed his temples, exhaling sharply. Maya's words had forced cracks in the armor. But the proof, the living, breathing truth, was unstoppable. "I want concrete actions," Maya continued, voice unwavering. "Policy reviews, staff retraining, public acknowledgement of the incident, and guarantees that this will not happen to anyone else. Compliance reports must be submitted to independent monitors. Anything less is insufficient." The room shivered with tension. Executives exchanged glances. The owner's confidence faltered completely. Silence pressed on him, heavy, unyielding, uncomfortable. Tanya's voice whispered in her ear, "Stay focused. Keep the pressure on. Evidence is your shield." Maya's eyes scanned the room, taking in the fear, the discomfort, the realization that their systems were vulnerable. "Accountability is not optional," she said. "It's not about your comfort or image. It's about justice. And justice requires action, not words." The airline owner looked at her, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, finally understanding that power without responsibility is fragile. "Fine," he said, voice low, defeated. "We'll comply with your requests. Policies, training, acknowledgement." Maya held up a hand. "Compliance is the beginning. I expect timelines, monitoring, transparency. Anything less will not suffice. And make no mistake, the public is watching. We are watching." He nodded, tight-lipped, and gestured for the executives to take notes. Every step of the process was recorded in Maya's mind. This was not a fantasy of revenge. This was structured, accountable, and verifiable, a reckoning that could not be denied. Outside, journalists were gathering, alerted by anonymous leaks and public social media momentum. The first press releases were already circulating. Each word scrutinized, each statement measured against the evidence Maya had amassed. Her phone buzzed, a text from a witness. "They're listening. Your work is making a difference. People are finally seeing it." Maya smiled faintly, tired but resolute. This was a culmination of months of planning, courage, and careful strategy. She had transformed personal humiliation into systemic accountability. Her eyes drifted to the skyline beyond the glass walls. Somewhere above, the airline owner likely sat, staring at the rising tide of exposure and realizing that authority without responsibility is an illusion. The polished smirk, the arrogance, the casual dismissal. They had all been shattered by preparation, persistence, and truth. She exhaled slowly, letting the weight of victory and exhaustion settle simultaneously. The reckoning was underway, not just for him, not just for the company, but for the countless people who had suffered quietly, erased and silenced by systemic bias. Her phone buzzed again. Another journalist seeking clarification, another witness ready to testify. Maya Thompson had not just survived humiliation. She had orchestrated accountability, and the world was taking notice. She glanced at her watch. Time had slowed and accelerated simultaneously. The boardroom confrontation had been decisive, the public momentum unstoppable. The airline, the owner, and the systemic bias that had sought to erase her dignity were all now facing the consequences. And somewhere in the city, a mother, a son, and a story of resilience were finally reclaiming power from injustice. The newsroom lights buzzed softly, cameras rolling, microphones poised. Maya sat calmly, the folder of evidence at her side, a stack of documents representing months of planning, courage, and persistence. Today, she wasn't just telling her story. She was documenting a turning point. Carla, the journalist who had been her ally from the beginning, leaned in. Maya, this segment is going to air nationally. What's your message? Maya inhaled deeply, her fingers resting on the edge of the folder. That systemic bias is real and accountability matters. Policies, statements, and empty promises cannot replace justice. People have been silenced for too long. Today, the truth is being seen, heard, and acted upon. The camera light warmed her face. She imagined the airline owner watching from his office, confident in his empire, but unaware that the tide of consequence had already swept through the building. Meanwhile, at the airline headquarters, the boardroom was a scene of calculated chaos. The owner, usually untouchable, sat slouched, the weight of public scrutiny pressing down. Executives whispered, PR teams revised statements every 10 minutes, and legal advisors shuffled documents, strategizing containment. "We have to comply fully," one executive said, voice tight. She's controlling the narrative, the public, media, and regulatory bodies. She's mobilized them all. The owner's jaw clenched. I underestimated her. This should have been routine. Policies followed, staff polite, and now it's everywhere. "Yes, sir," another executive replied, and every public reaction reinforces her story. It's too late to spin this. We need transparency and concrete actions. Back in the studio, Maya's voice carried across screens nationwide. She detailed the incident, shared witness accounts, and presented documentation carefully. Every piece of thread in the tapestry exposing systemic bias. "When one person speaks truth," Maya said, voice steady, "they can't be ignored. And when that truth is amplified, accountability becomes unavoidable. This isn't just my story. It's for every person who has been humiliated, dismissed, or silenced because of systemic prejudice. And it ends now." Outside the studio, social media exploded. Clips of Maya speaking, screenshots of documents, and hashtags demanding accountability went viral. Support poured in from advocacy groups, other affected passengers, and ordinary citizens sharing similar experiences. Momentum had reached a tipping point. Inside the airline headquarters, the owner finally leaned back in his chair, a rare look of defeat on his face. We have to issue a full public acknowledgement," he muttered. "Training programs, policy revisions, everything." One of the younger executives glanced up nervously. "Sir, the public sees through any insincere gesture. This has to be comprehensive and verifiable. Anything less risks permanent damage." The owner rubbed his temples, silent for a long moment. "Fine. Full compliance, internal audits, independent monitors, and make sure the public sees this." Meanwhile, Maya's phone buzzed with messages. Witnesses confirming statements, journalists requesting follow-ups, advocacy groups expressing solidarity. Each notification reinforced that her meticulous planning, courage, and strategic resistance had transformed humiliation into systemic accountability. Later that evening, Maya walked through her neighborhood with her son by her side. The city lights shimmered off wet pavement from a recent rain, reflecting her own clarity. He looked up at her. "Mommy, did we win?" Maya smiled, kneeling to meet his eyes. "We made them accountable. We made sure people saw the truth. And that's how change begins, baby. One step at a time." They passed a cafe where patrons glanced at their phones, reading updates about the airline's announced policy revisions. Social media feeds were flooded with support for Maya's story. Public scrutiny had forced concrete action. Change had been compelled, not optional, not performative. That night, Maya prepared a summary for the regulatory agency and her lawyer. Every policy revision, every training initiative, every independent monitoring plan had been documented. This was a tangible outcome of her months-long battle. She wasn't seeking revenge. She sought justice, systemic reform, and visibility for all those whose voices had been silenced. Tanya called later. "You did it," she said softly, pride evident in her tone. "They're finally being held accountable, and your story will prevent this from happening to someone else." Maya's chest swelled with a quiet satisfaction. It wasn't easy. Every day was a test. Microaggression silences, PR spin, intimidation. But I stayed focused. I used evidence, witnesses, and truth as weapons. And it worked. Tanya laughed lightly. You weaponized courage, and now the world sees it. The owner underestimated you, and the system had to bend to accountability. That's poetic justice. Maya leaned back in her chair, her gaze drifting to the window. Somewhere in a high-rise downtown, the airline owner was likely staring at his empire, seeing for the first time that authority without responsibility is fragile. Every polished veneer of power he had relied upon had been exposed. She reflected on the personal cost, stress, sleepless nights, the emotional toll of reliving humiliation, but also on the triumph of strategy, resilience, and unyielding courage. She had transformed pain into action, invisibility into visibility, humiliation into systemic accountability. Her son yawned, rubbing his eyes. Maya smiled down at him. Time for bed, baby. We've done something important today. As she tucked him in, she whispered quietly, change is possible even when the system seems unmovable. Never forget that. Later, she reviewed social media one final time for the night. The airline CEO had issued a public acknowledgement. Staff training schedules were announced, and independent monitors were confirmed. The story was no longer just about her. It had become a catalyst for awareness, accountability, and justice. Maya exhaled, tired but unbroken. Months of fear, humiliation, and microaggressions had culminated in a reckoning that could not be ignored. The airline owner's arrogance, once untouchable, had met reality, and the consequences were clear. Truth had won. For Maya Thompson, the journey had been painful, exhausting, and emotionally raw. But standing in the quiet of her apartment, with her son asleep and the city lights flickering, she felt a deep sense of closure. Justice had been demanded, accountability enforced, and the silent witnesses of bias now had a voice amplified through action. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Somewhere, people were reading, watching, and learning. And Maya, exhausted but resolute, knew that one voice, when wielded with courage and strategy, could indeed compel justice and transform a personal struggle into a lasting reckoning.